To me, and possibly most of the populace, the Sega Saturn was one of the more forgotten consoles in the 5th generation of gaming. Even though it was one of the first, it couldn't hold its own against the Sony PlayStation, even though they shared mostly the same capabilities, and when the Nintendo 64 came out, it was clear that the Saturn was turning into the third system, which is a shame because it was a decent system to say the least, and it had some good titles to go with it. Not to mention a solid controller. Don't believe me? Well, feast your eyes on this. This is the Sega Saturn controller, the primary controller for the Sega Saturn. It's one that stands out from the previous, maybe not in color, but certainly in design. As you can see when putting the Master System and Genesis controllers next to the Saturns, it's obvious to see the evolution that has taken place. From 8-bit to 16-bit to true 32-bit. We've hit all the numbers divisible by 8 except for 24. I wonder what that could have been like. Upon closer inspection, we see this very unique D-pad or D-button, as I believe they were still calling it that. And I say unique because, let's face it, have you seen this kind of design before or since? It almost looks like a mix between a C and D-pad, where it's enclosed in a circle but still has the 4 common directions implanted for additional support. The 4 implants also stick out and the circle goes in a little bit, so you can easily place your thumb down and move around it without any fear of slipping or misplacement. I want to think this directional input could be one of the better designs of all time. Certainly would be if its system was more popular. In the middle we have the Saturn logo, the Sega logo, and in between those the sole start button. You may not consider this, but I do find it odd that there isn't an additional select button. Everybody by this point, apart from Sega, had accepted the select button for additional button support, so I wonder what Sega had against it. Certainly wouldn't have looked too good with the rest of the design, but still, it would have been good to have. Moving right along, we have the traditional A, B, and C buttons, as well as the X, Y, and Z buttons on top of them. This design picks up where most other Sega controllers by this time and the Sega Nomad started, by having these additional buttons for the more complicated or very popular fighters of the day. Having these buttons already there for you is good to have, and where the bottom 3 are a bit flatter, the top 3 stick out like a sore thumb. Not to say your thumbs will be sore after pressing these, they're actually pretty comfortable, but maybe if you kept your thumb on one of them for a long period, you may get yourself a letter print on your DNA. On top is not only the cord for the controller, but also the shoulder buttons on each side. They adopted the Super Nintendo way of not letting you know which one is right or left. Not that you would need to know, I hope. But one interesting thing to point out is when you press on them, only maybe half of the button will go down, as you can see. I just find it weird how some control schemes work out sometime. Maybe if they waited to take notes from Sony, they could have fixed it. But we wouldn't get $299 if that was the case. Now, of course, an AC review wouldn't be complete without looking at the back. Usually it isn't worth it. And it's pretty much the same case here. We've got your standard Sega logo and model info along with several screws, but the thing that sticks out quite literally are these big indents that you would grip your other fingers with. That is, if you can. I find it a bit awkward, and I usually have my fingers in a potential position where they could just slip off. I mean, it's fine, but I still have to say that the Dreamcast still has the best grips out of any Sega controller. Now we've come full circle. The Segalution is complete. Certainly have a few standouts and those that have been forgotten, but you can't forget Sega's controller from the 6th rock from the sun. So let's plug this into the main unit that also came from the 6th rock and play some of its many offerings. With this controller, you'll be able to play all of the Sega Saturn games in the library because that is what a primary controller does. And I must say it does feel really good to play something like Tomb Raider with this. She isn't always associated with the plaything. The Sega Saturn may have one of the more forgotten controllers in gaming history, but I think it's more of a hidden gem of controllers as it did a good amount of things right. You definitely need to get it if you're thinking about getting a Saturn, because if you want to play Sega's console that came all the way from the ringed planet, you're going to want to have all the tools. Believe it or not, this isn't the only controller released for the Saturn. There were quite a few, and I'll be sure to review them. Scratch that, I guarantee that I'll review them, because what would be the point of this show if we didn't go over every single accessory / controller in existence, right? Got any fond memories with this controller / accessory? Tell me about it by leaving a comment. If you like what you see, be sure to leave a like. If you think others would like this, share the video around. And if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button pronto. This is Brian the Blue, and I'll see you later.